Evidence shows that there were Africans American not only before Columbus, but before Christ. And it has been carbon dated, and we can establish this beyond the shadow of a doubt. The reason why history has to be reconstructed in the Americas and in Africa in the way it is done now is because we cannot use the same historical methods that are used in Europe. Europe has had the enormous advantage of the conquest in that its libraries have remained fairly intact for many centuries. Our libraries have been shattered, and it's not a question of the lack of libraries. In the Americas alone, there were thousands of books. Only 3 major American books survive, and they're not even in America. They're in Germany, they're in Spain. 3 books survive. One of them is the Popol Vuh, the Bible of the Quiche Maya. You have the Titulo Koyoi, which Jairus Boy mentions. You have other codices. These things are the few things that survive. The destruction of libraries in Egypt, the sack of Alexandria, which destroys, as I pointed out this morning, perhaps 500,000 documents. The destruction of the Moorish documents in which blacks were involved, not just blacks. You have Arabs of different complexions and races perhaps, but you have an Arab-African thing in the Moorish domination of Europe. You have Cardinal Ximenes destroying about 84,000 manuscripts in Arabic at a time when many Africans and Arabs and even others wrote in Arabic as the language of science of the time. And Timbuktu was razed to the ground twice. So it's not just the absence of documents, but the destruction of documents. Fortunately, history does not leave its mark only on written documents. History leaves its mark on everything. If you do not find the books, there are scripts. If you do not find, there are skeletons, there are sculptures, there are plants. There are many things that have left their mark, and that is the reason why we reconstruct history by going to all of those strands, into all of those avenues. It is not an historical method. It is the only valid, genuine historical method to reconstruct the fragmented history of Africa and the Americas. In the case of Columbus, for example, why is it we who are so familiar with the voyages of Columbus are not aware of the fact that Columbus never touched the American continent? Why are we not aware of the fact that Columbus remarked on this matter not just once? Several times he mentioned on his 3rd voyage that he went along the coast of Africa, that he stopped in the Cape Verde for several days looking for black animals because he found both the Africans and the Native Americans in the Caribbean were sacrificing black animals, and he wanted to please them with a black animal as a gift. That he wandered further, finding no such black animals. He wandered further into the Senegambia current and was swept. He said he had 6 ships, 3 were sent on the normal route, and he was swept on the Senegambia current, making it in far less time, but under grievous conditions because the Europeans were totally unaccustomed to the great sun burning down upon them in tropical latitudes. And Columbus reports how the heat was so great in the equatorial regions as he took the African route that the caskets burst, the meat roasted and putrefied, and that he feared for the life of his men and himself if rain had not fallen. All these things are recorded in the document. They're just the sides. They're just the sides, things dismissed, pushed aside, until we put together the botanical evidence, Gossypium, Hirsutum var Punchtatum, the metallurgical evidence that the Spanish metallurgists had assayed the metal spheres and showed them to be African, the navigational evidence, because the currents move in that direction and the Portuguese had noted the Africans had the navigational capacity and were actually setting out from the Cape Verde. The documented evidence, both of Columbus himself and of the Portuguese, the oral tradition of the Native Americans, all of these things are there. Until we pull them together, they make no sense, because they're constantly being thrust aside, because they suggest Africans are where they should not be. Let me deal not with that early period, because I merely pointed out as an example of the method that is used to reconstruct history, and that it is a valid and legitimate method, and the only method that is available to us now because of the great destruction of documents.